Liz Danes on Gilmore Girls is generally not a liked character, and this is predominantly due to the fact that she abandoned her son. And what I find so interesting about this character is that the tone of this show seems to suggest that Liz is very lovable and quirky, but the information that we're given about her paints a very different picture. It seems like the show sweeps Liz's antics under the rug. There's no redemption arc for her. She doesn't make amends. There's no confrontation. She doesn't actually seem sorry, which seems to be the main gripe of the audience. The fact that Liz is presented as a lovable and quirky character, despite the fact that she is, in fact, a deadbeat mom. But, as some fans have pointed out, Liz's portrayal might actually be an accurate representation of someone who is careless and selfish and impulsive. When we actually look closely at her behavior, she's not lovable. She's just as inconsiderate and selfish as she's described to be before she actually comes on the show. The issue then seems to be not in Liz's representation on the show, but rather the way in which the show treats Liz's presence. And this is what I really want to explore, the way in which the show shows a neglectful parent, and whether or not the representation in the show is accurate, and if there could have been another way to portray Liz. Was there a better way to show a parent that demonstrates neglect? So first, I want to look at what we know about Liz before she comes on the show. Before Liz comes on the show, we find out that she is a mess. Luke is yelling at her on the phone, and we find out that she is shipping off her son to Luke because apparently Jess, her son, has been getting into some trouble and she can't handle him. And Luke is very blunt in describing his sister.
Look, all he needs is to be around someone who's not a selfish basket case.
He also explains to Lorelai that when they were young, their mother passed away. His father was working at the store. Luke started working with his father at the store.
And Liz was off doing God knows what.
And what's important to note is that Luke doesn't blame his nephew for the fact that he's been getting into trouble. He knows what the cause of the trouble is.
His problem is obvious. It's his mother. We never could count on Liz for anything.
Later in the episode, Liz calls Luke, but Jess doesn't want to talk to her. And then a few episodes later, Luke lies to Jess about the fact that his mother didn't want him home for winter break. So apparently, Luke tells Jess that he wants him around for winter break, but the truth is, his mother never called. And what's really sad about that is that Jess knew that Luke lied. The fact that Jess knew that his mother didn't want him gives us a lot of insight into their relationship. Jess was made to feel unwanted. He grew up feeling like a mistake and a burden, and he's aware of the fact that his mother doesn't even want him home for winter break. This already paints a very negative picture of Liz and a very sad backstory for Jess. There are only 2 occasions where Jess mentions Liz, and in both occasions it's very negative. The first time is when Rory's talking to Jess and she's asking him why he's not going to college, and Jess says,
"Ask my mother. She could give you a couple reasons."
The second moment is when Jess is talking to his father. He needs a place to stay, and he says that he can't stay with his mother because
My mother's a whack job!
Then Liz shows up. And when she shows up, she's this free-spirited, hippie, happy chick. And this is where the fandom, I think, gets upset because it almost seems to discount Jess's experience. Liz seems to be very lovable and happy. She seems like an airhead, but her presentation doesn't give off the deadbeat mom energy that we were expecting. But like I said before, her representation might in fact be accurate because all the information that we're given does suggest the fact that she is very impulsive and selfish. So one of the things that we find out about Liz is that she's constantly chasing men.
I hate being single.
When we first see Liz, she tells Luke that she found someone new, and Luke is just not really happy about that fact because according to Luke, Liz always seems to find the one.
Liz, every time you find the one, you wind up with your bank account cleaned out, your stuff missing, and crying on the phone to me to bail you out.
We also know that Liz got married at least 3 times.
Or my second husband, or like my boyfriend after my third husband who died.
And she's had boyfriends in between. And when we first meet her new man, TJ, Luke wants to team up with Jess to get rid of TJ. And Jess is just not fazed by this. He tells Luke,
Of course I don't like this guy. I don't like any of the guys. But she's gonna do what she's gonna do.
So it's very clear that there's a pattern of behavior with Liz, and Jess seems to have given up. Then Luke goes to New York to ask Jess to come to the wedding. Jess doesn't want to go to the wedding, and he says,
No biggie, I'll just catch the next one.
So he has absolutely no faith in the fact that this is going to work out because based on his lived experience, it never works out and this just keeps happening. Based on what Jess tells us, he has had no input on Liz's relationships. It appears that Liz does not seem to care what he thinks, and in the span of the 17 years that she's been taking care of him, she's managed to get married 3 times. She's coming up on her 4th wedding by the time that he's 19, and she's had relationships in between. And something else that's telling is that Jess ends up attending the wedding, and not for Liz, but for Luke. Liz has been taking care of him for 17 years. Luke has been taking care of him for just 1 year, and he shows up for Luke. Something else that we find out about Liz is that she seems to be a fan of drugs and alcohol. Now, because this is a family-friendly show, I don't think that Gilmore Girls could flat out say that she has a substance abuse problem, but I think it's gently implied. First of all, when we first see Liz, she finds some old pot in the closet. Now again, this is weed. The culture around weed is different now, and this might not imply anything, but then we get to her wedding, and she says to Lorelai,
I don't want to screw up this marriage even more than I want some pot.
and when she mentions her prior weddings,
This is my first wedding of mine that I've ever been sober for. I'm probably going to remember this one.
and then the worst one, the absolute worst one, is when she finds out she's pregnant, and she tells Luke,
I am going to take care of myself this time, big brother. I'm going to do all the healthy things for me I did not do last time I was pregnant, like not binge drink.
A good plan.
oh my God. So this is a woman who's prioritized relationships, has spent her time chasing men and having fun over, again, taking care of a child. There's also some evidence that Liz is kind of self-centered. The first thing that she asks Luke is whether or not she looks good. And when he says she looks fine, she says,
I do not look fine. I look good. I am good. I'm really good, Luke.
so it's a way of self-validation and self-assurance that she's doing well. Another moment that kind of stuck out to me is when she runs into Lorelai and she asks about her engagement. She congratulates her and she wants to look at Lorelai's ring, but then she feels the need to mention her own ring.
Good taste.
Yes, he does.
You ever see my ring? It's a beauty.
Definitely.
And then another moment is when she's cooking dinner for TJ and Luke, and then Jess comes in, which is a whole other story in itself. But when he comes in, she says,
All the men in my life are drawn here to me.
so there's this vibe around her that she seems to want to validate herself and she seems to want to draw attention to herself or make herself appear good. And Liz also seems to be oblivious to how Jess feels and how Jess is reacting. And what's interesting, and I think it's worth noting, is that on the show, there are only 2 moments where they interact. The first time is when he comes upstairs while Liz is cooking dinner for Luke and TJ, and he doesn't seem to want to be there, and he wants to leave, but Liz just does not seem to notice at all that he wants to be out of there. And when Jess is talking to Luke, he highlights the fact that
She really doesn't care what I think. I've got 19 years of proof to back me up.
so again, he has a very defeated attitude when it comes to Liz. The second time that they interact is during Liz's bachelorette party. Jess is coming in downstairs and Liz grabs him to show him off to her friends. And again, we see that Jess just doesn't really feel like being there. Again, he showed up to the wedding for Luke, not for Liz. And he generally just seems kind of aloof and annoyed. He doesn't seem angry or upset, but it's clear that he just doesn't really care about what's going on and he just leaves. And when Jess is referring to Liz, he tends to call her Liz, not Mom.
Liz was doing the right thing. Are you ready? The crowd's getting restless.
You're getting restless. Hey. You say goodbye before you leave.
I'm just going to get more food.
You promise?
I promise.
When we remove Jess as an element to Liz's character and we just focus on Liz as a character, it seems like Liz's function is to serve as a challenge to Luke.
Oh, come on. A couple of steaks. What's the big deal?
The big deal is I run a diner. I sell food. It's how I make my living. It's how I can afford all this.
Oh, you can spare a couple of things.
How do you know what I can spare?
When Lorelai's first talking to Liz, Liz tells Lorelai that she knows that she's a pain in the butt to Luke.
I kind of screw up a lot, and then he has to fix it, and then we fight, and then I screw up again, then he fixes it. It's a pattern.
And as the show continues, we see that Liz continues to cause trouble for Luke. And it's usually minor, but she does serve as an oppositional force. For example, she's cooking Thanksgiving dinner and she's using Luke's diner and she's being just a nuisance. She's behind the counter. She's interrupting his work. She's being obnoxious to customers.
Hey, do you mind giving me a hand?
and she's just causing a mess in general. Then when Luke is working on remodeling Lorelai's house and he's talking to a contractor, Liz is listening in and she begs Luke to hire TJ as a contractor. Then TJ proceeds to bulldoze a hole in the side of Lorelai's house. Another time, TJ and Liz are injured, and so Luke steps in to help them at the rent fair, and he spends the summer helping them out, and it appears that TJ is milking the situation, so he seems to be getting better, but they continue to use his help. Liz is self-aware in this moment. She does know that Luke has to go back, but she still relied on him for help. And yet another time, TJ and Liz get into a fight, and so TJ crashes Lorelai and Luke's romantic date. And then Liz barges in, and then she tells him to leave, but then she locks herself in the bathroom, and then they continue to have just a super loud fight, and it completely ruins Lorelai and Luke's romantic night. Generally, this does seem to be Liz's purpose on the show. The focus is not her relationship with Jess, but on her relationship with Luke, and specifically to just cause trouble for Luke. It does appear that the show does depict Liz as someone who is kind of impulsive, reckless, kind of selfish. I mean, we see that she buys a house the same day that she's looking for a house without any inspection. So we do see a lot of that impulsive and kind of selfish behavior. She does cause a lot of challenges and problems for Luke. But what's also important is how the rest of the town, how other characters view Liz, because that kind of sets the tone for how the audience is supposed to perceive this character. And one person that's very significant is Luke. Luke also has the same anger towards Liz that Jess seems to have, but over time, Luke seems to have softened. So in season 4, episode 13, Liz apologizes to Luke and she expresses gratitude, so she thanks him for looking after Jess. It's very genuine, and Luke genuinely accepts the apology. They hug it out, and after that, everything is copacetic. Going forward, Luke doesn't have the same rage and anger towards Liz. He does get annoyed with her, but it seems like it's annoyed in a very brotherly way. We don't have that sort of deep-seated anger. And we could see in his behavior that he is standing up for Liz. So one example is when Liz is getting married, Luke goes all the way to New York to get Jess to come to the wedding. In that moment, Luke is considering how Liz is feeling, and he's not really considering Jess's side of the story. He's not factoring in potentially why Jess wouldn't want to go. He's standing up for Liz because in his mind, he's keeping the family together. And then when there's a bachelor party, TJ and Jess get into a fight, and it seems like Luke is more upset with Jess than he is with TJ. And it's interesting because the next day, Liz gets married to TJ. And generally, I have less of a problem with TJ, but that moment, it troubles me. I know that Jess at this point is 19, he's an adult, but there's something so troubling about the fact that the fiance got into a fight with the 19-year-old son, and Liz is just perfectly fine with marrying him the next day. There's no discussion or trouble or issue. I mean, this is a grown man kind of attacking a younger guy, and again, this is her son, and everything seems fine, and Luke doesn't really see it as a red flag. Another thing that I found really interesting is that when Liz gets pregnant, she lies to Luke and she tells him that TJ left her. Then Luke goes all the way to look for TJ and he's ready to punch him, and then TJ tells him the truth.
Tells me she's pregnant, I hug her, I kiss her, I'm crying, I'm so happy. And then I turn to grab the phone to tell the family, and an ashtray hits me in the back of the head. And a phone book and a stapler and a statue of a happy clown playing the saxophone.
So Liz became a very physically violent person. And at the end of all of that, rather than Luke defend TJ, he drags TJ back to Liz to bring them together. And it almost feels like this family has normalized violence because we see that Luke is also kind of a violent character. So it just makes me wonder if all of this is just swept under the rug with that family because none of this seems to be crazy for him. Luke is not giving an earful to Liz. He's actually explaining things to TJ. So when TJ gives his backstory, Luke says, hey,
because she was taking it out on you. Oh.
And Luke doesn't really seem to be mad at Liz for that. He just seems to be very understanding, and I think that's odd. At the end, it does seem like the way that Luke reacts is very defensive of Liz by the end. And then the rest of the town seems to be very accepting of Liz. So Lorelai meets Liz. She's nice to her. The rest of the town seems to love her jewelry. They're all friendly with her. They all chat with her. And that element, I think, makes a lot of sense because no one's going to just flat out tell this woman, hey, I think you're a bad person, because she's not harming any of them. So it makes sense. Even Lorelai makes sense to me because, I mean, we know that Lorelai doesn't like Jess. Even if that was fine, it seems like kind of out of bounds for Lorelai to just step in and start attacking Liz. So everyone outside of Luke, I kind of understand their reaction. At the end of the day, Liz's portrayal on the show might sadly be a realistic portrayal. It might seem like to the outside world this is someone who is a little oblivious, someone who's a little impulsive, but behind closed doors, the only person who feels the pain and the impact of their actions is the child, and everyone else is not really impacted, and everyone else wouldn't necessarily step in to help out. And the person might have family members who might prioritize keeping the family together rather than acknowledging the pain that the child has experienced. So this might be a realistic portrayal of that type of a parent. But because this is a TV show, the public wants justice. Right? The public wants comeuppance. The public wants to see amends, or at least an acknowledgement, or confrontation, or an understanding of the behavior, because Liz never has to face consequences. On the show, she gets a beautiful wedding, she gets a child who at the end, she ends up pawning off to Luke again anyway, so she has a small baby, and she has no trouble leaving the baby to Luke to take care of plenty of times.
I'm gonna leave her with you, and I'll be back in an hour.
What?
So the behavior continues, but she gets lucky. She gets a husband who's supportive. She has a support network in Stars Hollow. She has a brother who will always continue to support her, and there are no repercussions to her actions. She gets to start over. Meanwhile, her older son makes it on his own, and there's no acknowledgement of that.
Got money, Jess turned out fine. Your son turned out fine. He's doing great.
It is important to consider the fact that Gilmore Girls was a family-friendly show, still is, and it aired on WB. So because of that, it couldn't really address really heavy topics. And some fans have speculated that if it wasn't a different network, such as HBO, Liz might have been a much darker character, and just Gilmore Girls wasn't equipped to cover such a heavy topic. And this made me think of another show, another character that reminds me of Liz Danes, and that's Monica Gallagher from Shameless. So very mild spoilers for those of you who are not familiar with Shameless. Shameless is about the Gallagher family. They're living in poverty in Southside Chicago. There are 6 children. They're being raised by the eldest, Fiona, because their father is an alcoholic and their mother abandoned them. And then one day, their mother, Monica, shows up. And Monica seems to be kind of like Liz in the sense that she's happy, she's kind of a hippie, free-spirited person. She comes in with her new partner and she wants to start her life over again. And at first, she's also kind of oblivious to how her kids feel. And this is where the difference starts. On Shameless, the children are the main characters. It's about the Gallagher family. Whereas on Gilmore Girls, while Jess is a significant character, he's still a side character. And the show does focus on Lorelai and Rory. So we don't actually get to focus on Jess's reaction. Whereas on Shameless, it's all about the children's reaction. And the children feel broken. When Monica shows up, they don't know what to do with themselves. They are so physically upset. A lot of them just want to leave because they can't handle it. They can't handle her presence because her presence is a reminder of the fact that she abandoned them. There's a little bit of a difference in the way that the younger kids react and the older kids react. The older kids are just done with her bullshit. They just want to leave, whereas the younger kids still need a mother, and so they're a little bit more welcoming. And we do see some parallels in the way that the children react and how Jess reacts. I would say that Jess's reaction is a toned-down reaction of the children in Shameless. On Gilmore Girls, we see that Jess just leaves. He doesn't really want to interact with Liz. He calls her Liz. And on Shameless, we see that, again, the older kids, they don't want to be around her. They just want to leave. They kind of ignore her. And when she's very much in their face, they become physically upset. They also call her Monica. They don't call her mom.
She's over at Sheila's.
Who?
Monica.
So I kind of see Monica Gallagher as what Liz should have been if she was on a different show, because Monica also comes off as someone who's friendly, and maybe other people wouldn't notice how bad she is. But on this show, there is a confrontation, and that makes a difference.
They did it all, no thanks to you, because you weren't here.
So what's missing on Gilmore Girls is this feeling of accountability, because Monica is held accountable for her actions, whereas Liz is never held accountable. There's no emotional outburst. There's no reconciliation. There's no redemption. And when I rewatched some scenes of Shameless, I almost had more respect for Monica than I did for Liz, because there are moments where Monica feels truly apologetic. You could see the emotion on her face. She feels remorse. And at the end, she doesn't take the youngest son away. Part of the reason why Monica came back into their lives is to take the youngest son, Liam, with her.
You don't get to abandon your kids and then show up one day to take your pick of the litter.
At the end, she lets the son stay. So there is a little bit of an acknowledgement of the fact that she has made mistakes and that perhaps Fiona and the rest of the kids are better caretakers than she is. If the decision was up to me, I would have preferred if Gilmore Girls had at least one scene that had a real confrontation or a conversation between Jess and Liz. I do understand that perhaps it might have been too dark, but I think it would have given some accountability or some closure for the audience. And perhaps it would have allowed people to not feel like Jess's experience has been discounted on the show, but that's just me. I would love to know what everyone thinks of this, if I missed anything. And if you like Liz, I'm not here to judge or attack. I just wanted to focus on this specific issue. Also, I want to acknowledge the fact that I am on camera right now, so the format is a little bit different. It's just a little bit easier for me to film it this way, but I am happy to go back to the old format. I figured I'd just oscillate between the two styles. If you have a preference, let me know. So if you prefer the old format, just leave an emoji or just let me know. Or if you prefer this, let me know. Or if you just don't care and either one is fine, just let me know. I'm happy to do either one. I won't be offended either way. I'm happy to do both or either. And again, thank you so much for watching.